Hello everyone, a very warm welcome to you all. Today in this video, we'll be looking at mapping, which is a reference data type. Alright, so having said that, let's jump right in. So what are mappings? Usually mappings are used to create a hash map between one type to another type, meaning that you are trying to create a key value pair type of relationship. And in this case, you are linking a type of variable to another type of variable. So in the last video, we talked about struct. Basically, the struct contains an action and whether the action has been completed, right? So as a developer writing a smart contract, you can basically want to create a relationship between a user and their different to-do items, right? And in this case, this means that you're trying to like create a relationship between a type of data to another type of data, right? I hope that makes sense. So usually, when we are trying to declare a mapping, the syntax is you declare the mapping keyword with your parentheses, then the key type to your value type. Having said that, when you're trying to use key type in your mappings, it's important to note that key can be any built-in types plus byte and string, and most importantly, they are not reference types. So that means when you're trying to create your mapping and you're trying to add your key, right, you can use a reference data type, right? But for the value type, you can indeed make use of any data type from reference type to even value types. In this case, your value type can be either an array or even mapping itself. So when we are trying to like take a particular look at mapping, to also be looking at nested mappings, right? So a practical example is basically linking your address to a value type you in to track each user token balances. Another example, like I mentioned previously, is using your address or linking your address to a reference type of struct, right, to track each user's to-do items, whether they have completed their to-do task or not. I hope that makes sense. All right, so let's head over to Remix IDE to take a practical look at some of these explanations. All right, so let's quickly take a practical look at mapping. Let's declare a new file called mapping.so. So now that we have our mapping file created, let's quickly set the compiler version, right? Um, and once that is done, declare the contract keyword, name it mapping, and let's call it mapping. And so the first thing we want to do is check how to declare a mapping, right? And instead, you use the mapping keyword, the parentheses, then the key. In this case, we want to create a relationship between an address to a UIN to basically track the balance. Right, so the key will be an address and the value is going to be here. So let's declare the visibility to public and let's call this balances. Right? Okay, so because we declared this as a public variable, it's going to automatically create a getter function. So yeah, let's take a look at how to create the getter function. Let's call this get balances, and we want to pass in the key, right, which is an address with the dr. Let's set the details to public view result viewing. Then we actually want to return balances. Then we insert the key. And so this function basically returns whatever that is being stored in this balances mapping with this user address, right? So by default, it's usually the default value of whatever is in the value type, right? So in this case, the balance will be default to 0, right? Let's create a setter function, set balances, and the one we want to do is want to get the key. I also want to get the value. In this case, let's call this balance, right? And public. And say balances, it takes in the key of address equals val. Right, so I hope that makes sense. Moving forward, we also want to take a look at how to delete or how to remove functions. Let's call this address addr and public. So do delete by addr. So this basically returns the this particular line to the default value. So if the current value of the balance mapping is say 500, so once you run this function, you set it back to the default value, which is 0. So very quickly, let's take a look at nested mapping. And how we want to do that is create a mapping and set it to address um, to another reference type of mapping. And so you declare this to be doing with another value of boolean. Let's call this public and we can set it to nested. Right, so this is how to work around a nested mapping. Right, so let's take a look at creating a setup function for our next nested mapping. Let's call this set. Let me just copy this line of code and paste. Yeah, let's call this set nest nested. It takes in address and balance. Then we want to set bool to be to, so now we'll say balance, then we'll add, because it's a nested mapping, we want to add the balance, then we'll set this to, oh sorry, we'll call this nested instead, nested, then we'll set it to bool. Alright, so this is how to create the setup function for nested mapping, right? So even the delete keyword also works. It sets it to the default value. So because we already made this public, it automatically creates a getter function. So let's deploy our mapping contract and see how it works. So yeah, we have balances. So we have to pass in a key. In this case, let's pass in this address. We have address. We have 0 by default. So let's try to set our balance. Um, so once the value has not been initialized for the mapping value, it takes the default value of its type. In this case, the value type for this mapping value is unit, right? So let's set this to transact, and when we try to call this again, we have balance of 100. Right, so let's try to call the nested mapping also. If we try to check the nested mapping, let's see, we have address to 100. Let's see, so we have false. So let's try to set this to we have 100 to true, right? So we have true. So yeah, that's pretty much all about mappings. We've been able to look at how mappings work and the different mapping structures, how it helps us to like create relationship and also how to do nested mapping. So thank you very much for watching. See you in the next video.